January 1988 was a bloodbath. 8 movies released in just 2 weeks, and together they lost somewhere around $50 million. I've got Burt Reynolds and Liza Minnelli here. Their big reunion made $295,000 total. I've got Whoopi Goldberg suing to stop her own movie from being released. And I've got a legendary French director who signed his deal on a cocktail napkin at Cannes and then deliberately made a film nobody could understand. While Robin Williams was becoming a dramatic star and Disney was printing money, these 8 films were busy ending careers and bankrupting studios. Let's break it down. Jean-Luc Godard is one of the most important filmmakers who ever lived. He helped invent modern cinema. So when Cannon Films, the studio behind Chuck Norris movies and cheap action flicks, announced they were making a Godard film, everyone assumed it was a joke. It wasn't. In 1985, at the Cannes Film Festival, Godard and Cannon boss Menahem Golan literally signed their deal on a cocktail napkin at the Majestic Hotel bar. MoMA later offered Golan $10,000 for that napkin. He refused. The budget was somewhere between $1 and $1.4 million. Cannon expected prestige. They expected credibility. They expected something they could submit to the Oscars. What they got was chaos. Here's where it gets interesting, though. Godard hired Norman Mailer, the legendary author, to write the screenplay and star as King Lear. Mailer's daughter Kate would play Cordelia. Mailer actually wrote a complete script, mafia-themed. Characters named Don Liaro and Don Gloucestro. Then Mailer and his daughter flew to Switzerland to start filming in September 1986. They shot for maybe 2 days. And then Godard insisted Mailer play a character with an inappropriate relationship with his own daughter. Mailer walked off set and never came back. Godard kept the footage anyway and just edited it into the final film. You'd think that would be the strangest part. It's not. Godard also tried to cast Richard Nixon for a 15-minute scene about power. Nixon said no. Woody Allen did a brief cameo and later called it one of the most foolish experiences of his life. Molly Ringwald showed up and received her dialogue the night before shooting. King Lear premiered at Cannes in May 1987. The screening received catcalls. Cannon was furious. Producer Yoram Globus reportedly said, "Godard took Cannon for a ride." The U.S. release in January 1988 was essentially a burial. 2 weeks at Film Forum in New York, $61,000 total. Cannon actually sent a letter to the Academy asking for the film to be withdrawn from Oscar consideration. The funny thing is, critic Richard Brody later called it the greatest film of all time. Criterion released a new restoration in 2025, but in January 1988, it was just another embarrassment for a studio that was already drowning. But at least Godard knew what he was doing. This next one was a masterpiece that nobody wanted. René Laloux made Fantastic Planet in 1973, won the Special Jury Prize at Cannes, changed animation forever. By 1988, he was ready to make his final feature film. Gandahar was a gorgeous French animated science fiction epic based on a 1969 novel. Isaac Asimov wrote the English adaptation. The U.S. voice cast included Glenn Close, Christopher Plummer, Jennifer Grey, and Bridget Fonda. On paper, this thing should have worked. The U.S. version cost $5.5 million. Miramax handled distribution. For context, Miramax in 1988 was still a tiny indie company struggling to get films into theaters. They weren't the powerhouse they'd become in the 90s. Gandahar opened on 7 screens total. It made $48,000 opening weekend. Final domestic gross was $370,000. The animation studio that made it? SEK Animation Studio of North Korea, the same studio that would later work on the Simpsons movie. Here's what went wrong. Adult animation in 1988 was considered completely unmarketable in America. Studios didn't know how to sell cartoons to grown-ups. Miramax cut 6.5 minutes from the French version, replaced Gabriel Yared's original score with generic synth music, and changed the title from Gandahar to Light Years. Harvey Weinstein took a directed-by credit on the US version despite contributing nothing to the actual filmmaking. And to make matters worse, Akira came out the same year and made Gandahar's animation look primitive by comparison. René Laloux never made another film. He passed in 2004. Gandahar never got an official US DVD or Blu-ray release, though a French 4K restoration came out in 2024. It's got a passionate cult following now, but in January 1988, it just disappeared. Miramax couldn't sell a masterpiece. New World Pictures couldn't even sell Whoopi Goldberg. Whoopi Goldberg tried to legally block her own movie from being released. She filed a $5 million lawsuit. She lost, and the telephone came out anyway. This was supposed to be a one-woman showcase. Goldberg plays Vashti Blue, a struggling actress alone in her apartment, talking on the phone. The role was originally written for Robin Williams, but his manager turned it down. Director Rip Torn, yes, the actor, took his only shot at directing. The screenplay came from Terry Southern, who wrote Dr. Strangelove, and Harry Nilsson, the legendary singer-songwriter. Budget was around $2.2 million. New World Pictures distributed, and from day one, the production was a disaster. You'd think the star would want her movie to succeed. Here's what actually happened. Rip Torn wanted to film the screenplay as written. The producers encouraged Goldberg to ignore the script and improvise her stand-up act instead. Torn had to beg her to perform takes that actually followed the screenplay. Goldberg had veteran cinematographer John Alonzo, the guy who shot Chinatown, fired during production and replaced him with her husband. Two completely different cuts of the film existed. When the Directors Guild ruled in Torn's favor after arbitration, Goldberg's version would have required a disclaimer saying it violated DGA agreements. So on September 4th, 1987, Goldberg filed suit in Los Angeles Superior Court, seeking $5 million and an injunction to stop the film's release entirely. The judge ruled against her on October 27th. The telephone hit 50 screens in January 1988. It made $99,000. At a New York screening, audience members literally screamed, "I want my money back." The New York Times called those the truest lines spoken during the film that night. Goldberg got a Razzie nomination for Worst Actress. Rip Torn never directed again. Harry Nilsson's production company folded a couple years later after his financial advisor embezzled all his money. The twist ending reveals Vashti's phone was disconnected months ago. She's been talking to no one the entire time, which feels about right. That one's almost funny. This next one's actually kind of sad. Promised Land was the first film ever commissioned by the Sundance Film Festival. Robert Redford executive produced. Michael Hoffman directed, a Rhodes Scholar who founded the Idaho Shakespeare Festival. The cast included Kiefer Sutherland, fresh off The Lost Boys, Meg Ryan before anyone knew who she was, and Tracy Pollan, who was engaged to Michael J. Fox at the time. This had prestige written all over it. The budget was $3 million. Vestron Pictures handled distribution. For context, Vestron had just released Dirty Dancing, which was still making money in January 1988. They were riding high. Promised Land opened to $31,000. Extremely limited release, basically New York and Los Angeles only. Final domestic total was $316,000. Vestron essentially buried it. Here's the thing though, this wasn't a bad movie. Critics gave it 73% on Rotten Tomatoes. The Los Angeles Times said it was almost a great American movie. Meg Ryan drew specific praise for whipping between wounded tenderness and shrieking rage. It got nominated for the Grand Jury Prize at Sundance, but Vestron didn't know how to market dark, downbeat material. This was Reagan-era disillusionment with a tragic ending. It was based on a true story from Hoffman's hometown in Idaho. None of that translates to posters and TV spots. Vestron was great at selling home video. They didn't understand theatrical distribution. By 1992, they filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Michael Hoffman survived. He went on to direct Soap Dish, Restoration, One Fine Day, A Midsummer Night's Dream. But Promised Land, the first Sundance commission ever, just vanished. Vestron couldn't market a Sundance darling. Handmade Films had the opposite problem. A movie with future Oscar winners that nobody wanted. Five Corners starred Jodie Foster and Tim Robbins, two future Oscar winners. George Harrison's Handmade Films produced it. Tony Bill directed. He'd won an Oscar for producing The Sting. The screenplay was by John Patrick Shanley, written while he was still bartending. His first feature script ever. Budget was around $5.5 million. Set in the Five Corners neighborhood of the Bronx in 1964. Filmed in Queens in late 1986. The cast also included John Turturro, who was a complete unknown at the time. You'd think a movie with this much talent would find an audience. It didn't. Opening weekend made $78,000. Total domestic gross was $969,000. The film got delayed repeatedly, originally scheduled for summer 1987, pushed to September, then November, finally dumped in January 1988. Here's what's wild. Director Tony Bill had to fight to cast Jodie Foster. She was famous for Taxi Driver, then dropped out to attend Yale for 4 years. After graduation, she was considered forgotten. The TV company financing the project literally refused to let Bill hire her. He fought and won. Tim Robbins had only done Howard the Duck at that point, a notorious flop nobody saw. John Turturro was just a New York theater actor. Five Corners got 78% on Rotten Tomatoes. Foster won Best Female Lead at the Independent Spirit Awards. Turturro got nominated for Best Supporting Male. Shanley got nominated for Best Screenplay. And here's the kicker. That same year, Shanley won the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay for Moonstruck. One of his films became a beloved classic. The other made under $1 million. Within 2 years, Foster won her first Oscar for The Accused. Robbins broke out with Bull Durham. Turturro became a Coen Brothers regular. Five Corners launched careers. It just didn't make any money doing it. But those were small movies with small budgets. Here's where the real money started burning. Burt Reynolds was the #1 box office star in America for 5 consecutive years in the early 80s. By January 1988, he told the press, "A lot of people in this business think I am a has-been." He wasn't wrong. Rent-A-Cop reunited Reynolds with Liza Minnelli. They'd worked together in Lucky Lady back in 1975. Reynolds got a $3 million salary. Minnelli was making her first film in 5 years after seeking treatment for substance issues. Kings Road Entertainment gave them somewhere between $12 and $16 million, reports vary, and filmed at Cinecittà Studios in Rome. They expected a hit. They got Catastrophe. Rent-A-Cop opened on around 200 screens. It made $295,000 total, not opening weekend, total. That's a per-screen average of about $1,500. One of the worst wide releases in American history. You'd think two legends reuniting would generate interest. Here's why it didn't. Reynolds had destroyed his credibility by turning down the role Jack Nicholson won an Oscar for in terms of endearment, so he could make Stroker Ace instead. His recent films had all flopped. Minnelli hadn't been seen in years. The movie itself couldn't decide if it was a romantic comedy, an action thriller, or a crime drama. Roger Ebert gave it 2 stars and said there was no reason to see it. At the 9th Golden Raspberry Awards, Liza Minnelli won Worst Actress for this film, and Arthur, 2 combined. Reynolds was nominated, but lost to Sylvester Stallone. Reynolds wouldn't truly recover until Boogie Nights earned him an Oscar nomination in 1997. That's 9 years of wandering in the wilderness. Reynolds thought his career was on the line. Dan Aykroyd was about to find out his was too. Orion Pictures gave Michael Ritchie $19 million to make The Couch Trip. Ritchie had directed The Bad News Bears and Fletch. Dan Aykroyd starred alongside Walter Matthau and Charles Grodin. Chevy Chase did a cameo. Test screenings got what executives called absolutely fantastic numbers. Orion was so confident they pushed preview screenings on over 1,000 screens before the wide release. Opening weekend made $3.35 million. 7th place. Total domestic gross was $11 million, which sounds okay until you remember the budget was $19 million. That's roughly an $8 million loss before marketing. You'd think fantastic test screenings would translate to success. Here's what happened. The Couch Trip opened the exact same weekend as Good Morning Vietnam. Robin Williams playing an unconventional radio host, Dan Aykroyd playing an unconventional radio host. Same premise. Williams executed it brilliantly and became a dramatic star. Aykroyd got crushed. And The Couch Trip was just the beginning of Aykroyd's 1988. He also had She's Having a Baby in February. Flop. Caddyshack 2 in July. Won him the Razzie for Worst Supporting Actor. My Stepmother is an Alien in December. Flop. 4 movies in 1 year. All of them failures. Walter Matthau was struggling too. The entire 80s were rough for him. Buddy Buddy flopped. The Survivors flopped. Pirates flopped. He wouldn't regain star status until Grumpy Old Men in 1993. Roger Ebert gave The Couch Trip 2.5 stars and called the ending a mindless and meaningless action sequence. Aykroyd wouldn't recover until Ghostbusters 2 and his Oscar-nominated role in Driving Miss Daisy, both in 1989. The Couch Trip is just forgotten now. Chuck Norris blamed his own studio for trying to end his career, and honestly, he had a point. Braddock. Missing in Action 3 was the 3rd film in Cannon's action franchise. Chuck Norris starred, wrote the screenplay, and had his brother Aaron direct. Aaron's first time behind the camera. Budget was somewhere between $4 and $9 million depending on who you ask. filmed in the Philippines, standing in for Vietnam. For context, the original Missing in Action made $22.8 million in 1984. Missing in Action 2 made $10.8 million in 1985. Each sequel earned roughly half its predecessor. Braddock was chasing diminishing returns from day one. Opening weekend hit $2.2 million. Fifth place. Final domestic gross was $6.2 million. Technically profitable on the low budget estimate, but after marketing and theater cuts, probably break even at best. A massive disappointment for a franchise that used to be reliable. Here's the thing though, Cannon Films was collapsing. By early 1988, they were facing bankruptcy. They'd slashed Superman the 4th's budget from $36 million to $17 million, and it still flopped. Masters of the Universe lost money. The SEC was investigating their financial statements. Warner Brothers backed out of their partnership. A class action shareholder lawsuit would eventually settle for $33 million. Chuck Norris saw what was happening and went public. He told press, "I was frustrated with the job Cannon Films did with marketing the film. I told them if they didn't do a better job marketing my films in the US, I was going to take them to court because my career is on the line." He wasn't exaggerating. Cannon would be taken over by Pathé within a year. The action star era that Norris helped build was ending. Schwarzenegger and Stallone would adapt. Norris would fade into direct-to-video, and eventually, Walker, Texas Ranger. The film has one genuinely affecting element. Norris dedicated the entire franchise to his brother Wieland, who was lost in Vietnam in 1970. Whatever you think of the movies, that dedication was real. January 1988 was the month 70s star power officially flatlined. Burt Reynolds, Liza Minnelli, Dan Aykroyd, Walter Matthau, Chuck Norris, all of them had films fail while Robin Williams transformed into a dramatic star, and younger actors like Jodie Foster, Tim Robbins, Meg Ryan, and Kiefer Sutherland prepared to take over Hollywood. The studios behind these disasters, Canon, Vestron, New World, were all months away from collapse. The home video market was overtaking theatrical. The rules were changing. The stars who survived 1988 adapted. The ones who didn't spent the next decade trying to figure out what went wrong. 8 films, 2 weeks, $50 million lost, and almost nobody remembers any of them.